money, my motivator. My money maker. No, I don't see them haters. So let go get the paper.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Spare Keys podcast. I am your host, Shell, accompanied today with.
This is your host, Q, guys.
And today we're going to start this podcast off talking about a few things on the finance side, such as things like working for your money versus earning your money. And I think the two biggest discrepancies between those two things is everybody sees as working a regular job is still earning your money because you have to clock in, do what you're supposed to do, and leave. Therefore, you get a paycheck in return. I see it like this. If you're clocking in for a job that's not your passion, not your job, like not your goal in life to be doing, you're working. You're doing what somebody else is telling you to do, and they're going to give you what they feel is valued at. That is working. Earning is when you're doing something you love, something you have no other passions for, but that's your heart is set on that, and you're setting your own price, and you're getting what you feel your time should be valued at.
Thanks. I want to say though that even if you are doing what you love and you're working for somebody else, you still have a W-2, you still have a job, and I mean, granted, this doing what you love as far as a job is great. Like if you love your job, it's dope. But the point of the conversation here is about how money works and to reveal the perspective on. Because, okay, lately you see a lot of things, not even lately, just in general, you see a lot of things where it's like, okay, like people get mad at Jeff Bezos for not paying taxes on his, billions of dollars earned this year. But what they don't realize is they're not really playing the same game as him. Like the money is working differently.
Yeah. It's a big difference when you can get your money to make money versus when you got to go earn every dollar you have.
Right, 100%. It's much easier. So like, there's the hardest money to make and avoid taxes is W-2 income. Like it's whenever you're working for somebody else, you got benefits, you might have a great job, but like that is the hardest money to keep untaxed, just because just the way the rules are set up. America is set up for the independent earner, or the America is set up to provide incentives for people who create jobs, right? So like, if I'm not mistaken, the last time I checked, when you're an employer, you get tax write-offs for your employees, like, because basically your business essentially treats them like dependents. Like, all right, I'm supplying these people's salary, therefore I can write their salary off as part of like a taxable income or non-taxable income, basically. I think that's how it works. I don't quote me on that one. I could be wrong. If you know otherwise, please correct me.
I feel like that's something that might be on the true side, just because I know back when I was working in that retail space, they focused a lot on turnover rate, and it wasn't necessarily to do with the quality of people you were keeping. It was about keeping a certain number on staff for a certain period of time.
Right. And when I was working at Accenture, I could expense so if I was doing work travel or whatever, and I needed to get something like work related, like a mouse, a keyboard, even sometimes luggage. Like if I think I broke a bag once while I was on a trip, and I needed luggage to get home because my bag it wouldn't hold stuff. So I had to buy another carry on, and I expensed it, and nobody said anything just because that carry on. That money adds up. So basically I just created like another taxable, like another expense for them to say, okay, hey, this is going to be a write-off because we had to do this to support our employees, like that type of thing.
That's a very scalable type thing, I'll say. Just because I know, like me and you both, like I said, we run our own businesses on top of everything we do in our life now. There's many write-offs that I have when I buy things for my business. When I'm buying training ladders, bags, and different things like that, all that becomes something I can put on to a tax write-off form at the end of the year, and it'll go against my money made, which there in form lowers my taxable income.
Yeah. So essentially, yeah, anything you buy for your business or you purchase to support the growth of your business or any kind of business expense. Even when you go on trips, you can then expense. You can then essentially make like flights, rental cars, stuff like that, a taxable like a write off. You know what I mean? So basically, if you went somewhere for work, so like I went to a conference in Dallas just for the weekend. It's a 3 day conference on real estate. Um, I expensed our flights. I expensed the rental car. I expensed. Well, we didn't stay in a hotel. We stayed with a friend of ours, but those all the things like half of the food we ate, I expensed like all that stuff. Like basically, free trip to Dallas. Not a completely free trip, but like I got to write off most of the expenses for that trip.
Yeah, yeah. Like that's the idea of it, and that's said, and that comes from the definition of working and earning. When you're earning money and you're in control of filling out that tax expenditure sheet and all that, there's many different things you can write off. When you're working for somebody though, they get to pick and choose what they as a company can write off and what you as an employee still have to pay for.
Right? Because as an earner, I could easily say, all right, look, I'm going to Bora Bora because I want to check out some real estate in Bora Bora. I might be purchasing some stuff in Bora Bora, and as long as like the majority of those days I'm there, I'm going out looking at properties, for sale. I'm in the green. Like I can expense that whole trip just because okay, I said that I said that this was that, excuse me. I said that that's what this was for, and therefore they have to take my word for it. I have receipts, expenses. I showed them, hey, I went to these properties to check them out while I was there. This is the food I ate. I expensed all of that.
Yeah. Like the company I used to work for, they used to take all the store managers down to Orlando. They go to freaking the amusement parks around there and all kinds of things. But they spend quote unquote majority of their days in a conference room going over the business. Realistically, they're probably spending a few hours going over the business and giving them the rest of the day off. That's an all expense paid vacation on their behalf that the company gets to write off. But it goes down in the books as they were working.
Right. So like we used to have team dinners too when I was at Accenture. So essentially, any kind of team outing or team event, like managers basically schedule like a team building. And I did air quotes there. I know you can't see that. I did like a team building event basically. um, so they would take basically everybody out to like maybe like bowling or something, or like like a bar, or like we go out for like trivia night and we just kind of kick it and drink beer and eat food and you know shoot the shit. And essentially they got to write it off just because it was it classified it as a team building event. So therefore, it's now it's a tax write off for them.
Oh yeah.
And man, we used to rack up bills. Like my first when I first got on with Accenture, they sent us to training for 2 months. In not St. Louis, but in Illinois, in St. Charles. There you go, St. Charles. We were at the bar, and I'm telling you, it's like karaoke night. We're at the bar. It's a facility with classrooms and rooms for like people that are coming in to like attend classes, but there's also like a bar on on campus. It's like it's a weird setup. But anyway, we were at the bar, at karaoke night on Monday, and like the managers there are paying for drinks like just left and right. Like I'm talking about, we're racking up a tab like four or $5,000, and all they're doing is saying, okay, we're writing this off because they're here at a training facility. Like it's like I was like, this is basically just a giant party. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. Well, once again, the man in charge gets to decide on what happens.
Basically.
So that's kind of the thing, though. So, like you said, if you have a job that you're passionate about, and say like you're an architect designer and you don't run your own architect company, but you work for a large architect company and you're fulfilling your dream of that passion of designing and getting buildings built in your image. Yes, like you said earlier, you're following your passion, you're living your dream, but as long as somebody else is valuing your time and they're still filling out your tax forms as in you're getting a W-2, you are not in control of your full destiny, and you are not in control of all your earning potential that you could make.
Right, exactly. You don't have full control over your creative design. You don't have full control over your hours. You don't have full control over how much money of the profit that you actually make. Um, and on top of that, like you don't even get to decide how long you get to keep your job. For the most part, like at any particular point in time, your employer could be like, all right, we're not gonna fund you anymore. We think we're done with your project, and they cut you loose, and that's it. You don't even get to discuss it. Oftentimes, they just kind of show up, and you're finished.
Yeah. As I say, you lose control once you give it over to somebody else to follow your passion or value your time. So like my business myself, I will say probably never, because you're gonna have to offer me a whole lot for me to give that control to somebody else. And at that point, if I'm giving the control to somebody else, they probably bought me out of it and I'm doing something else. But you want to try to be in control of your maximum potential because, like I said before in a previous podcast, who's going to have your best interest in sight, you or the person that's paying you? The person that's paying you's got other things of value. He's got his interest, the company's interest. He's got a lot of other things to weigh besides just your own personal interest. But if you're the one in charge, it's always you in charge and then taking care of you. And then if you have employees under you, now it's you, your business, and those employees. But those still decisions are falling on you, and you're able to allocate where money goes, what happens, and what goes on in that process.
Right. You essentially become the person in the driver's seat. You don't have to follow the direction of anybody above you. You know what I mean? And I feel like, okay, entrepreneurship isn't for everybody. I can understand and I get it, but there are ways to leverage your money so that you don't necessarily have to. You don't have to be an entrepreneur, but you do need to be an earner, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
When I say when I say entrepreneurship, people think, oh, you got to have a business, you got to start a business. Not necessarily. You just got to make wise investments. Like, so I'll distinguish an entrepreneur from an investor. An entrepreneur is someone who provides a service or product to people on their own dime, on their own behalf, right? They're trying to build a business, like with employees, or maybe just a service they do themselves, right? They're trying to construct a business. But an investor is someone who essentially buys assets that work for him, such as like buildings, stocks, in certain cases, like I could say vehicles, right? Because there are ways to like jump into the trucking industry. Like you purchase a truck, you find a driver, and then now that driver is picking up jobs for you on your behalf. It's kind of a business, but if you have, let's say, 1, 2 trucks, you got 2 drivers. It's not really a business, especially if especially if, let's say, somebody that has just CDLs, right, or somebody that is already trying to do their own courier service, right, but they're renting a truck from like a bigger company, and what you do is you go half on them with the truck, and now they have their own truck, but then they split the profits with you. Something simple like that. A passive. I say it's like a passive side hustle because you're not really the one like driving the truck or really setting up the pickups and drop offs. It's just you have interest. You have financial interest in this truck, therefore you're entitled to
Amount of
profits.
proceeds.
Yeah.
Yeah, so passive income essentially. So
Yeah.
that would be. I think that should be a goal of everybody, whether you're an entrepreneur or an investor of any kind, is to find a way to develop passive income. Passive income is pretty much the art of making money without actually having to put in a whole bunch of work or legwork to go get the money. And the
Right.
same thing like real estate is like the easiest way to describe it. So like you own an apartment complex and say you have 10 apartments. Say you decide you're going to live in one of your apartments. So now you have 9 apartments to rent out. Let's just say you live in a good space. You're renting out those apartments for $1,000 a month. That's $9,000 a month that you make, allowing other people to live in your other units that you can't occupy yourself. So every month you're
Right.
making $9,000. Remind you, you own the building, so you're not paying rent yourself, and now you're making an income off of it.
Exactly. Exactly. That's a very good way to put it. So in that circumstance, you would call, well, a lot of people call that like house hacking. So that's where you buy a piece of real estate, you live in part of it, and you rent the other parts of it to other people. And that could be anything from a house, like you said, a duplex or a triplex or an apartment complex. Something more than 5 units is considered a commercial property. But essentially, you're living in part of it and allowing other people to stay with you in order to pay the bills for that property.
Yep, you're able. You're setting yourself up in a way. Like I said, once again, you're not forcing and hunting down people to live in these units. People need places to live. You put a couple ads out on Craigslist, put a couple ads in the newspaper or a site here and there, but you're not banging on doors saying, "Hey, you want to move?" And once you get those people in, those tenants, you're able to cash flow and you're able to bankroll and save money, and then you can still have a regular day job. You can
Right,
work your regular
right,
day job on this place, and then you're still making the income from both places.
right, right. Just imagine. So, like, you remember when we were in college, right? Um, like the first year, we spent a lot of money in housing.
Yeah,
So just imagine if we had bought like a house and lit and like we imagine if we bought a house, like two of us had lived in two of the rooms in the house. Let's say it's like a 4 bedroom house, and we um we live in two rooms and we rent the other two rooms out. So basically, if the mortgage is like $800, we could easily rent the rooms for like 600 or 700 a month and make that mortgage payment and keep the money left over, for ourselves. Easy way to save money while you're in college.
yeah,
That's one of the things I really want to get into once I have kids. Right, it's like one of the first things I'm probably gonna do is to buy a house, put it in my children's name, and then essentially have that house be in what do you call it, like a trust fund, right?
yeah.
So that it basically goes it go that money, the money from the rent goes into that trust fund. Uh, I believe tax free. I'm not sure yet. I hadn't done a whole lot of research on that, but essentially, it whatever profits we make go into a fund for my children, and it grows as an investment. So by the time they're 18, like they could choose to take the money and go to college or whatever, or start a business, whatever they want to do with the money. It's
Yeah, that's crazy alone, but that's like a good way to set up your children for success in the future. Period.
right longevity. So like just to buy like so just imagine like if you bought your kids like an asset like every birthday, right? Like like set your child up like an IRA, right? And then use that IRA on behalf of your kids to make investments. And by the time they're 18, like they're straight, like
Yeah,
they're good.
yeah. So like the quick math on that scenario right there, where you're buying a house for your child and all that. So that's 216 months of rent.
Right.
Like I said, and let's just once again we're gonna stay in this good special around where I live. Let's say this neighborhood where rent's around $1,000, no interest on it at all. I mean, you're just putting the money aside. That's $216,000 that you're about to that an 18-year-old will have access to. What would 18-year-old me and you do with 216,000? And I'm not talking about from like a spending standpoint because I know as money illiterate that we were at the time, we probably buy a bunch of reckless stuff. But I'm
I would have
saying
bought
that
a car for sure.
But I'm saying, but being able to have that kind of power out the gate, you can pay for if you want to go to a big college and you can get in, but they won't give you a scholarship. Now you can pay for most of that yourself. If you want to go the route of community college and transferring over, you still can pay for classes yourself. If you want to go start a business, you got the funding to start your business at a low impact cost. You're not begging anybody for loans. You're not fighting with banks to get a loan. You have a good nest egg behind you that you can branch off and explore life and do some different avenues of what you like.
Right. It's a whole bunch of. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, you go.
It's a whole bunch of different avenues for you to take a look at. Essentially, just I mean, it's it's a lot to get into in one episode, right? But I mean, basically, first and foremost, you need to teach your children how to think. Secondly, behind that, you need to teach them how money works. And once you combine those two things, like the world is an open book at that point. It's it's really hard to keep somebody down if they number one know how to think about their situation. Number two, if they understand how money works and they understand how to generate money from money or from nothing, like how can you put a limit on that?
Oh yeah. The minute you expand a person's way of thinking, you can change the problem. As in, everybody knows 2 plus 2 is 4. But the minute we start getting into higher math and you start throwing in fucking X's and Y's and all those other things, it becomes a whole new math problem. You throw in a whole bunch of different variables, you're able to change what the outcome of it is. So the minute that you, one, financially teach people how to manage money and how there's different ways to create money, that you don't have to go to somebody else to find a source to get money, but you can find a way to manifest money pretty much out of thin air just for services that you can render on your own, whether that's landscaping, building things with your hands, painting, writing. Like I said, there's so many things that you can do that don't require the permission of somebody else to make money.
Right. Exactly. Like it's crazy, man. It's it's hard to sometimes it's hard to get people to like understand that. Like I would hate to say this, but like it's like you can't really tell somebody something they're not ready to listen to, right? Like there were things as a kid, you know what I'm saying, your parents tried to tell you, and you were trying to listen because you felt like you were right, you felt like you knew everything at that point, or either that or you just it was something you wanted to do and you felt like you had to do it to stay whole, right? But once you open your mind to listen to different things and understand things, like your entire world opens up. And we touched on this, a couple episodes ago, I do believe, about how being from a small place and growing into a big world, like it really changes your perspective on life and things. Like it's I don't know. I have a I don't believe in staying in the same place that you grew up in. I mean, it depends, I guess, right? So we're from smaller towns, right? So we're from places where if you stay there, there's a definite ceiling to how successful you can be.
Yeah, we come from
Right.
places where there's 2, 3 locations where everybody knows if you work there, oh, you're going to be in the top third of what everybody makes versus everybody. Like let's just put New Bern in perspective. New Bern, if you get a job at Bosch, you get a job at Moen, and then you get a job at Weyerhaeuser. If you work at those 3 places in New Bern, you're going to be considered one of the well-off people. If you work anywhere else in New Bern and you're not a doctor or a lawyer, then you're going to be considered one of those lower class people. And then if you work at like McDonald's, then you're kind of the bottom echelon of that environment. Versus when you come up to Raleigh, there's no 3 companies that control how much a third of the population essentially.
Exactly. It's not even a competition. It's just like there's so much more opportunity in the bigger world. Like you once you figure out that there's a bigger world out there, like it's so hard to go back to that box you used to live in. You know what I mean? Like once you teach somebody how to think and they realize, oh, the world is vast, the world is huge. Like it's very hard. It's impossible for you to go back. Number one, because like you can't. There's definitely things that you don't know, but you can't you can't take that back once you've given that, right? So like you know there's the whole so like the Bible is a perfect example, right? Adam and Eve, when they ate the apple, they figured out, oh, we have knowledge now. Like we know we should wear clothes. Like we know so much more about the world now. And God was basically like, well, I can't take that back, so I gotta kick y'all out.
Yeah.
y'all are growing too big for this box. So here you go.
Yep. It's That's why, like what we said before, people get stuck in their environments. They either get comfortable or they feel a fear of going outside of it. And I think just because, like you said, me and you are both from smaller areas, and now we live in like the number one and number two largest cities, or top, let's just say top five largest cities, especially in the state of North Carolina.
Right.
We're open to a lot more. We're more diverse. You really couldn't put us back into New Bern or Clinton, North Carolina for a long period of time. It would, I think it would drive me crazy to be cut off essentially from how much of the world that we're used to seeing now.
Right. Yeah, it's just we're super exposed. Like I, I feel like I'm not really getting my point across, but like it's you can't. It's like a rubber band, right? Once it's stretched and like super big, like it never really goes back to that original shape it was at. Like you know what I mean? It just doesn't. You need a new rubber band.
Yeah, I got you.
It's it's a great thing and a tough thing at the same time. It's like all right, now I know all this. Now I have to figure out how to apply it. Um, for the most part, though, that's pretty much it. It's like the basic concept of you having a job. Like there's just certain limitations to a job. Number one, like we talked about before, you can't control that job. Number two, like we talked about the 2,000 year example last time, right? So we basically deduced that there's no way that you could work for 2,000 years and make more money than somebody who's investing that money for 2,000 years. Number one, because the money never really grows. You earn that $2,000 an hour, but after you do that, like you don't even like the person who works a $2,000 an hour job. The example was all right. Even if I don't have to pay taxes, even if I save every penny of it, like you just saving money and you avoiding taxes. Like first of all, the best way to avoid taxes is to have a business straight up. Um, but after that, like if you keep all that, even if you keep all that money, you try to hoard it and keep it to yourself. Like it's not gonna do you any good because number one, you can work that job for 40, 50 years. You're gonna die. Like in that not you're not even gonna make it to 100 years. You're gonna die, and then that job is gonna disappear. But for that first 50 years, if you take that $2,000 an hour and you invest that money, those investments will carry on forever. You can literally pass down that money to your children and then let them grow it even further. Like it's amazing.
Yeah, it is. I want people to try to start making money. I guess more than just as something you get for like I guess working. I'm trying to think of a way to explain this. Essentially, money needs to be your seed. You need to be able to take the money you earn today. You need to be able to find a way to make that money grow. And essentially, it's like a tree. You take an acorn, put an acorn in the ground. It's not. It's just going to be a seed for a while. But as time happens, you nourish it. You treat it right. The elements stay in perfect and prime conditions. It weathers the storms, and as it sprouts and it comes to the soil and it grows, and you continue to give it the nutrients and stuff it needs, it branches out. It begins to do what as it mature? It begins to sprout acorns of its own, which means it's reproducing. Which means, in a true sense, if you find a way to grow your money, you nourish that way of growing your money, there'll be a time and a place where your seed money is still the foundation of this, but you're able to branch out and spread joy, wealth, education through your family, through your community, and you'll still have that seed money to fall back on because that's the money that started everything. And you're never even going to spend that money because you're forming new money and new avenues and new ways to create and do things.
Right. If you grow money, it only gets bigger. So like you can literally take the money that you grew from that original seed money, pass it to somebody else. Now that's their seed money, and then they continue to grow, and they pass it to somebody else, and so on until it's just like a big, it's like a giant tree, and each branch is growing on its own as fast as it wants to.
Like I said, I think we think of everything in a scarcity mindset, as we don't think there's ever going to be enough to go around for everybody.
For everybody.
And I think we've seen breakdowns. I don't know if we talked about it much in the show, but there's a way that essentially everybody on this walking on this earth could be a millionaire. But I
Facts.
guarantee you, everybody that's on this earth that had that $1 million would not be happy, because they're going to feel like somebody has something else more than them. It's about taking what you have, realizing what you need, what you want, categorizing it, and finding a way to check everything off the list before you start venturing out and trying to accomplish things that you want versus what you need. So some people, what the old system is what bartering, right? If
Right.
I needed a job from you, I didn't pay you money to get this job done. I'm like, hey, Q, I need your help. I got to cut down this tree, get it out my front yard. What do you need done around your house? Maybe
Right.
maybe you need something simple that's in my skill set. All right, I got you. You help me get rid of this tree. I'll come over to your house next Tuesday and I'll do whatever X, Y, and Z task it was. And that's what happened. Money became involved with stuff like this because people didn't necessarily have a skill set to be able to accomplish things. So when you don't have a skill set to trade or offer, then what do you have to offer anybody? You don't really have anything. So then you find something that you think a person finds valuable, and you would say, well, hey, I have this gem, this jewel, this ruby, this whatever, but I need you to do this task for me, and I'll give you this in return. And all we keep doing, we kept changing what this element was. It went from gold, it was diamonds, it was silver, it was everything else, until we got to this cotton blend of little piece of paper-ish money. And now most of the money is digital, so it's just numbers on a screen. That's what we're chasing.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Glad you brought that up because that stuff still happens today. Like if I need a building built for my business, and I know my friend owns a construction company, I essentially pay my friend to build my building. It's a tax write off for me. It creates money for his business. On top of that, let's say after that, he needs something done for his business, like a like a massive marketing project for his company. So it's like essentially one hand washing the other, right?
Yeah.
I needed a building. Let's say me and you. I needed a building. I own a marketing company. I pay you since you own the construction company. You then build that. That whole build process is a tax write off for me. It creates money for you. And then on top of that, you now need a giant marketing project to bring awareness to your business. You then pay me. It's a tax write off for you because it's a marketing fee. It's for your business. It's a marketing fee, but you also generated money for my new business, right?
Yeah.
Like it still happens on a very large scale.
Oh yeah.
Like if you know somebody that has a landscaping business, right? And you're a real estate investor. You own houses. You're now paying them to take care of the lawns for all your properties. So that's a tax write off for you. Generates business for them. And now, let's say they need housing for some of their employees, right? Obviously, they come to you. They put people in your houses. You make money. It's a great investment for everybody.
Yeah. As I said, that we've changed the standard essentially. There's no more we're bartering for potatoes. The people that are bartering are people that don't need the money. It's the people that they're
Yeah,
smart enough to know a favor from you and a favor from me equals money from somebody else, and we're both going to get the profit off of it.
right. And it's always that like that partnership that facilitates that growth. Like it's I'll be 100 with you. It's real hard to it's hard to do everything by yourself. First of all, So if you're trying to make money, it's even harder to make 100 grand by yourself than it would be to make 100 grand with somebody else, right? You make 100 grand and you both split it, you got 50. You do that again with that same person, it was so much easier. You can probably add a third person and catch 35,000, right? Do that again, another 35,000, you hit your 100. You good. But I think a lot of people just, for the most part, like you said, they have a scarcity mindset. They don't want to work with anybody. They don't want to do anything. They don't want to do a 50-50. They want everything for themselves. You know what I mean? But like that's not how you facilitate business. That's not how you facilitate investments, right? Like it's if you enter into a partnership and half of you are doing and each of you is doing half the work, or each of you a third of the work, whatever, however the split may be, then you can get so much more done with a team than you can by yourself.
For sure, for sure. Because let me. I guess I can break it down onto a smaller scale, and I'm hoping people are staying with us. I know we're kind of a little bit all over the place, but we're in the same wheelhouse. So you take my business myself that I run right now. My business is currently a one man operation. It is me. It's a team of one of one. It is just me. And that's because primarily I coach one sport the best because it's the most sport that I've dedicated most of my life to, which is football. I have some friends and some people that are ready and willing to go once I get ready to start expanding and exploring other avenues. And I will as soon as honestly I'm getting a couple things laid out and set in stone. But I'm gonna have some employees that I bring on probably in 2020, and I'm bringing in other sports such as baseball, softball, soccer, and stuff like that. These guys, they're passionate about it. They love this sport. I know the sports. I could play the sports, but I don't know everything they know. So for me to not want to work with them and just keep my sports business in one lane, I'm hurting myself. I'm hurting myself. I'm
Absolutely.
hurting the market. I'm hurting a lot of different things. But these people have
Absolutely.
came to me. They've talked to me. We discussed some preliminary things, and it's simple. When I'm time and I'm ready for me to expand, and I have everything set up and I'm ready to expand, I'm bringing these people on. And am I going to go out there and do the training myself? No, I'm letting them do it. This is their passion. They love it. They want to teach it. I'm going to provide an avenue for them to do it. There, I get a part of the proceeds. They get a part of the proceeds, and the kid gets a great experience and gets to learn. It's just like you said earlier. You bring in a person to help you grow and learn, and you split your profits. I wouldn't be able to make anything at all in the world of baseball, soccer, and softball alone because I would have to teach myself everything before I could teach anybody else. That would back me. That would back me up for, let's just say, a year or two, for me to get a great comprehension over it. But I'm bringing on people that just like how I play football majority of my life, they play these sports most of their life, and now I'm bringing them on. I'm offering them something they feel they'll value, and in return, they're going out and doing these sessions. I do not have to do these sessions. I'm sitting in my office. I don't have to go out to the field and do these sessions right here. And I'm
Right.
still going to get a profit off of it. And somebody else is getting a chance to fulfill their passion and their hopes and everything else. It works out for everybody in their favor.
Exactly. Exactly. You get in exchange for granted, granted you will make less money than doing the sessions yourself, but what you get back is your time. So now if you have so let's say what I think you make what like 60 or what is it 55 a session? 50 a session?
It's 60 a session. Yeah, 60 a session.
So 60 bucks a session, right?
Yeah.
Or is that 60 per session, right?
Yep.
Okay, so 60 per session. So let's say what you probably do 4 to 5 sessions a week,
Yeah.
four or five sessions a week, right?
Hmm.
So let's give you a benefit of the doubt. Say you are hustling for real. Let's say you do 6 or 7 transactions a week. Let's say you do seven. That's $420 for a week if you do seven in a week. So basically, either one every day or two some days, whatever. So you
Yeah.
make 420. You make 420 a week. So if your scale is to say, all right, I'm gonna add what like maybe I think it's like what 3 guys to your team.
Yeah. Maybe three.
Three guys to your team, and I'm assuming they're going to charge the same. They're going to charge the same price for a session.
Rate to still be 60. The preliminary discussion about their money on it would be about 35 of what they get.
So okay, so it'll still be 60 for a session,
Yeah,
but they'll get 35, which means you'll get 25, right?
yeah,
So instead of making 60 sessions, you make 25 a session. Is that
yeah. That's
is that
correct.
right?
Yep.
So at 25 a session, right?
Yeah.
So you got three guys. Let's assume that they're even half the hustler that you are, right?
Yeah.
Let's say they're doing 3 sessions a week. So that's three guys, 3 sessions. So that's 9 sessions total.
Mm-hmm.
At $25 a piece, at $25 a piece off of 9 sessions, it's $225 a week that you would make where you didn't even have to do anything that week.
Yep.
And that's saying that there is half as dedicated to it as you are. So essentially being that if you go out there yourself, you make 60 a session. If you hire three guys to go out there and do sessions for different sports, and then you collect basically half of what they're making, they could do half as much work. They could do half as much work. Well, okay, no, not even that. They could do half as much work as you on a normal day, and you would still make half as much money you would make as if you spent your total week, like your full 7 sessions a week. Right? So like
Yeah.
essentially you go from working a full week. So let's say you just stop doing sessions altogether and you just let them handle everything.
Yeah.
Now you make $225 a week, which is half as much as you make, but now you do nothing, and that gives you time to go back and do whatever it is you want to do.
Yeah. It
Or
allows me the time to either create a new lane or find a new way to keep expanding the business or adding more benefits or features and stuff like that. But like I said, time is, as me and you both know, time is valuable just as money is, because you don't get a second back in the day. It doesn't matter what you do.
right, time is more important than money. To be honest with you,
Yeah.
more important than
You can
money.
make money back. You can't make back time.
Right? You can exchange time for money, but you can't exchange money for time. Facts. But it's just so like it, and it having those employees, having those people that put the work in for you on your behalf, like it increases your profitability exponentially, right? Because I said, all right, let's say you were doing, like I said, 5-7 sessions a week, and you make $420 a week off the sessions, right?
Yeah.
So now you got three guys doing 3 sessions. Let's say they were all a little bit more dedicated. They go up to 5 sessions. So now it's 3 times 5. Oh snap! It's 3 times 5. So that's 15 sessions a week. You making 25 off of 15. That's 375. So at that point, you basically back to what you were making if you were just going out there by yourself.
Yeah.
And if let's say you add another trainer from another sport, all of a sudden you over what you were making. It's
Yeah. Let's say
it's a
I
crazy.
bring somebody in and let them take over my football clients.
Exactly. You let them take over your football class, and you back to four avenues basically,
Yeah.
and it gives you more money than you were making before. You're essentially doing no work, and well, at least you're doing no physical work, as in you're not actually going out to meet clients,
Yeah.
and they're doing more sessions than you could ever do, like by yourself at least.
Exactly. Because, like I say, sorry, excuse me. One session's an hour, and let's say
Mm-hmm.
we had 4 people doing these sessions. And say you said 5 for the 3. Let's just say everybody's doing 5. That's 20 sessions. It's 20 hours a week. If I wanted to do sessions on Tuesday, most of my kids are in school. They don't, around here in Raleigh, they don't get out till about 2:30. going to about 3:45, depending on their age. I don't train in a
Hmm.
facility right now that has lights. So if I was training outside, realistically, I would have 2 to 3 hours, especially since the time changed from 2:30 until the sun sets. There's no way that I could effectively knock out a chunk of sessions in a day. I would have to try to spread everybody super thin, and people have lives, people have schedules. So if I have 4 or 5 people that want to do a Tuesday, I can only pick or choose two, maybe three. Now I'm leaving my other 2 people inconvenience. Versus now I have 4 people under me. I can divvy this up differently, and I can knock out multiple sessions at the same time.
Exactly. Exactly. You're leveraging other people's time to make you money, which is essentially what you're probably pretty much all of our employees are at this point. If you have a job, that's exactly what they're doing.
Oh yeah,
And in your example, I would say you're actually treating your employees pretty well because per session, right?
yeah,
You said you're collecting 25, they're collecting 35. They still make they still make more than you.
yep.
In most of our circumstances, our employer definitely makes more than us.
Hmm.
Like absolutely, I would have been surprised if you had said, you make 40,
20.
they make 20 yeah, 20 a session. No, I mean I wouldn't have been surprised at all if you said something like that because at this point you've established a brand basically, right? And people know you for your brand, and any recommendations you get are based off your brand is essentially it's like Amazon, right? Amazon has the market share. Therefore, when you as an Amazon seller, right,
Yeah,
you sell through Amazon because they have the market share, they have the attention, they have the eyes, right? They have the brand. And what most people don't know is that like a lot of the things you buy on Amazon, like it's not bought by Amazon. Like Amazon's not running quality control on it. They're literally distro.
yeah. Third party sellers.
Exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
Amazon's just in charge of distribution and customer service. That's it.
oh yeah. And that's my like I said, I'm still going through some things or whatever, and that's the rough figure. And the only reason I do not have a problem as a business owner and whatever giving my people a bigger share of the profits, it's like I said, one, I value everybody's time. So
Mm-hmm.
coming from a retail environment when I was making like 15 an hour, it was not a huge difference if I gave you I mean there is a huge difference yearly, but if I gave you a $5 raise and asked you for an hour of your time and I put you out there in the sun and you're dealing with a kid that doesn't want to listen, it's a lot of variables to go into that. I don't want this job to be a job where it's just like I don't want to do this because all it takes is one person not to show up to work one day and that ruins and starts chipping away at my reputation. But if you know that I'm going to take care of you and I'm going to vet out my clients to make sure that we have people that are diligent about showing up, you're going to have an invested interest in coming to work. You're going to have an invested interest in doing your best job. And as the business continues to grow, our relationship continues to grow, and that can sprout off something different for you.
Exactly. Exactly. You build that trust, that relationship. People stick around forever, and that's largely what the problem is now in most businesses, right? They've grown so large that there's no relationship between employees and employers, right? Like
Nope.
everybody is so far removed from like base level employees now that like
We're just
you just
employee
can't.
ID numbers.
Right. Basically, you get nothing else.
What was
That's
that?
it.
Old retail job. My employee ID number, it started off as it was 0252 when I got
Hmm.
hired with the company. Two
Right.
years later, when I came back to the company, or 3 years later, depending on however you want to count the cycles or whatever. When I came back to the company was on 044 or 045. Think of
Hmm.
that. That's how many employees, like thousands of employees that have cycled through in my 2 year span of me not being there. That my number started with 252 and now they're at 045.
Right. They cycle through all the numbers basically. Now they're back at the back at the beginning. It sounds like.
Yeah. Like that, it just continues to grow, it continues to climb. Now, mind you, when the business started, and I'll say probably about 5 or 6 years before I got in with them, they didn't use employee numbers. It was your name. They use your last name, your first initial, your first two initials, or so forth and so on, depending on if you're how many John Smiths they had. But it would use a
Right.
variation of your name. So now a lot of these first employees didn't even have numbers. But even when they started using numbers, when I got to, I don't care about saying my number because it's not like I'm going back. It was 0252 362. So
Hmm.
that means what, 252,362 people or 61 people worked for that company before me.
Right. At least.
Yeah,
Yeah. At least, depending on if they've, like you said, just cycle through numbers again.
yeah. So I'm like, that's thousands of people. And then we get upset at work when we don't feel like our jobs care about us. Because in a sense, our management staff that sees us daily, they may have some emotions towards us. But at the end of the day, we're just another number on the grand scheme of things. Somebody leaves, you replace it. It's that simple to them.
Right. If you've never seen somebody or you've never met them, how does their life affect yours? Short answer is it doesn't.
There's two
It just
reasons. I'm sorry, but there's two reasons, and I've noticed this, and I thought about this at work. The two restrictions that most workplaces have is don't bring your personal stuff to work, and the biggest one is don't discuss what you make to another
right.
person at work.
Hmm.
Two reasons. Why do you want to keep a person's personal life out? There's a lot of variable and legit reasons of why you don't need to know about somebody's going through a bad divorce at your job. At the same time, knowing about that divorce may allow you to treat a person or give them a little bit of leeway and maybe not pressure a person into making some bad decisions that can impact a whole lot of people. Anyway,
Right.
the biggest decision why companies don't want people talking about what you make is because I can have two people sitting side by side doing the same exact job for a big difference in pay.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. I agree. I think that so in the technology space, for the most part, like I know that happens. I absolutely know that happens. So two people with the same skill set, right, in the technology space. Let's say they're building databases, right,
Yeah,
and a lot of companies now are essentially hiring folks overseas, right? They usually call it offshore, right?
yeah.
So as pretty much anybody that's in India or anywhere close to that. So I know for a fact, just 100% off gate, all of them work for less than what we as Americans would work for, and that's a lot of that's a lot of the reason that they get hired. Companies are essentially looking for ways to decrease expenses, and essentially the biggest expense for the most part is employees, just because number one, if you're not satisfied with your job, you're going to leave it. Period. Like if you get fed up enough, you're just gonna leave. Number two, you're always going to ask for pay raises. You're always going to look for a way like, hey, I'm doing this work. I brought this much value. Hey, I would like a raise. Um, and what happens is people essentially get priced out for a lot of things. So like recently, right, I was looking for a position here in Charlotte with my old company, Accenture. I was looking for a new project, and I was essentially applying for positions at like, they were local, like here, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, like, doing some of the same stuff that I was doing previously, right?
Hmm.
However, the feedback that I was getting was that, hey, we think you would be a good fit, but your rate is a little bit too high for what we want to pay, basically. So essentially, they were saying, "Hey, you have the right skill set, but we're not going to pay as much money as you want to be paid."
Oh, I get that all the time in this training space. Like, I understand what I do. It's not a need.
Hmm.
It's a want type market. So if you want your kids to develop, or if yourself wants to develop, and you want to get better at your skill, you look for somebody to help you do that. If you go to I'm not giving out free plugs, so I'm not going to say the website. But if you go to one of the websites I'm on, and you go up there, you can see every trainer in the state that offers the service I offer, and you can see all of our hourly rates. And I've had people that come to me because I'm highly rated, but want me to do my services for somebody else that just got on the site for, like I said, I charge 60. Somebody else might get on the site and they might just start charging 25, and then they try to compare. Wait, I know you charge 60, but this guy over here does it for 25. Can't you come down to this? And it's like, no,
Yeah, no.
I value myself at what I value myself at. When I remind you, when I started doing this, I was at that $30 area, but I've worked.
Right.
I've charged as much as $75 an hour, and the only reason I'm at 60 is I feel 60 is I'll call it a fair market price for what I feel like I teach. I feel like if you really want to learn and you really want to invest in your child or yourself, I feel like 60 is a fair market price. But I could charge way more than 60 if I wanted to. But like I said, I feel like I don't want to disrupt the market and I don't want to count a lot of people out. But there's a lot of people out there that look at that $60 price and they'll take the tutoring from somebody that's at $25. And I don't know the kid and I don't know who they are, so I'm not even worried about dropping names or nothing like that. But that person may know nothing at all about the sport and found the website, filled out the application, and got through the process. And it's like, okay, cool. Now I can make money doing this. And now you're going to go out there and have a terrible experience with a guy that you're paying nothing. And you're going to think that the whole site's a scam because of one bad experience.
Yeah, exactly. You're basically gonna feel like that entire platform is a problem. Exactly that.
Yep.
Yes. It's one thing to be like, all right, I only want to pay $25 for the service, and you're charging 60. Can you give me a discount? I'm like, well, okay. You can clearly see that this person is new to the website. You can clearly see that I have, X amount of reviews. Like I'm tried and tested. People have reviewed me and loved me, and you essentially want me to drop my price to this guy's price because he's cheaper, but I've already earned this price. So there's no way for me to like there's no reason there'd be no reason for you to do that. It's just It doesn't make sense for you to drop your price even so because like you said, when you started there or when you started doing it, you were at a certain price because you were new. That's the one thing that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
When you're new, you start at those small prices, right? And then you bring it up as you get tried and tested and people have reviewed you, and you get your merit up, because then that brings you value. And so, okay, hey, people can see people have done this and gotten results. Therefore, okay, I need to charge more than this person who doesn't have any reviews or who doesn't have any like testimonials and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, like you said before, you got corporations that see your resume and they see what you can do, but then they look at that price tag and they're like, I don't want to pay that. People got to understand, it's just like the quality of food that you put in your body or the clothing and stuff that you wear. You get what you pay for. All the way around. You get what you pay for. So in return, if you value yourself, so in return, somebody offers you $10 an hour to do a job that you know damn well you should be making $30-$40 an hour to do, and you take that $10 an hour instead of fighting for your right or waiting for the opportunity to make what you deserve off of it, you're succumbing to the thought that your time is only worth what they valued it at and not truly what you know it should be.
Right. And you can't complain about it because you agreed to it.
Yeah.
Like I'd hate to be like all the people that are complaining about minimum wage, and I'm like, so there's two problems with that, right? So if you're in a minimum wage position, number one, like in my humble opinion, I feel like you were never supposed to stay at that minimum wage position. I feel like you were always supposed to grow and evolve and do something bigger and better. Like I feel like my opinion is that you should go further than that, no matter what. Like it doesn't matter how, it doesn't matter when. Like you should do something bigger and better for yourself. Period. At some point, you get tired of that shit and you move on. Yeah. And number two, as I said earlier, employers are looking for ways to decrease expenses. Like I said, one of the expenses they're looking at decreasing is basically employees, right? So either they're going to pay you even less, or they're going to find somebody who will work for less, or they're gonna replace you with a fucking robot that will definitely work for less. So to hire a robot is a one time fee. It doesn't eat, doesn't sleep, works so much faster and harder than you ever could.
So much more efficient.
Exactly. Doesn't complain. Doesn't need bathroom breaks. Doesn't gossip with coworkers. Doesn't have kids.
No
Yo,
sick days.
none whatsoever. Never calls in sick. Always at work. At work before anybody else. Shoot.
Yeah.
All it does is run. All it does is run up your light bill. That's it.
Yeah.
That's why.
Like,
That's why.
I'm gonna say that's the first expense, especially in retail. If anybody's listening to this and you work in retail, you know it from working in these brick and mortar stores. You know it. The first thing that gets cut monthly is hours for manpower. They don't ask you to do less work. They ask you to cut back on staff and figure out how to solve the problem from there. There have been plenty of times where I know in my old store we'd be budgeted X, Y, and Z hours, and then by the end of the month they're saying, "Hey, we need you to shave off 15, 20 hours." So now you're cutting shifts and you're cutting people for days and you're telling people to leave early and X, Y, and Z. What does that
Right.
do in return to your employees, though? And especially if you're in retail, you know this firsthand. What does that do to your money? You came here banking on an 8 hour shift, and now they're telling you got to leave in 5. Taking that 3 hours away from you when you're leaving from paycheck to paycheck, that is a big difference to you.
Big difference.
So it
That's
goes back to when we're talking about earning versus working.
absolutely. You work for somebody. They control the earnings. If you earn yourself, shoot, you're in charge of that. Now, whether or not you push yourself to capacity, that's up to you. I will say that being an earner is in the beginning is so much harder than being a worker.
It
Just
is.
because you have to get out of that mindset of being a worker and having somebody push you to do something as opposed to you doing it for yourself.
Why?
One of the rare situations where being selfish is harder than being selfless. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. 'Cause I say this, and I know in my shoes, when I want to do something for my business, whether I'm designing a shirt or in this case, I spent a couple days designing a website that'll be coming out soon. I had to force myself to sit down and do that. The first couple times I went to go build that website and I looked at some of the stuff and I was like, I don't want to do that. And I clicked off of it and I left it alone, X, Y, and Z. Nobody's going to come do that for me. There's nobody on my staff because it's just me that I can delegate to go do that for me. I have to do it myself. There's so many things that in the beginning you just have to essentially nut up and do it. And we're not
Right.
used to having that mentality of doing X, Y, and Z to get it done. Because you know what? If you work a regular job, is I'm gonna work from this time to this time, and after that, it becomes somebody else's problem. Well, when you work for yourself, every problem is your problem all the time.
Exactly. Every problem is your problem all the time, and how you deal with it is 100% up to you. When you deal with it is 100% up to you, and you got to realize that ain't nobody gonna come and push you forward. You gotta grab yourself up and
Oh
pick
yeah,
yourself up.
and you can't come relying on society to do it for you. Because to be 100% honest with you, a lot of people out there don't want to see you do it. They just don't.
Straight up.
I was like,
Straight up.
it's not a matter of the world considered like being evil and X, Y, and Z. As a lot of people are sitting there that had their dreams crushed, had their hopes crushed, tried to do it and didn't go in there full heartedly and failed. So they don't want to see somebody else come in there and do what they tried to do and couldn't do. So you gotta put that focus in. You gotta put that time in. You gotta understand that it's going to be hard. Like me establishing my company, it's hard work. It is still hard work, and I have paying clients. It is still hard work, and the more I want to grow, I have to work even harder.
Yep. You gotta go bigger. You gotta get back. Like, bro, imagine. So imagine if you had done all these sessions and you had made no money. Like the motivation, right? So you've gotten your wins.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like you've hit all your waypoints. You put your business up. You got your clients. You've had paychecks hit your account. right?
Yeah.
So you know what you're doing. You've gotten the satisfaction of doing what you're doing. Imagine imagine starting a business and have worked on it for months, no paycheck, or not no paycheck, but
Minimal results. Period.
minimum, right? Exactly, minimum results. And then after after like a year of working on it, you finally start to see like a modicum, like a small amount of like financial return on your business, right,
Yeah.
bro? That is the most fucking discouraging shit I have ever felt. But when it finally started rolling in, I was like, all right, okay, I can keep doing this because it only grows from here.
Oh yeah. That's a big thing right there. Because, like I said, you invest time in the beginning. You invest time. You invest some resources, depending on what you're trying to do. You invest time. That's your biggest commitment right there. You invest a lot of time into what you're doing, and then when you don't see immediate results, or you don't see results in a relatively, let's say, fast time frame, that could be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and you don't see anything come back for it, it's hard for a lot of people to want to keep pushing and keep going and stick with it. And I was one of those people. Like I said, show athletics is not my first business. My first business was still close to the same name, it was Shell Fitness. And I realized that the fitness industry, though, a lot of people wanted things for free. A lot of people, there was a lot of things controlling the fitness industry that I won't get into right now, that makes it hard for a new fitness person to make it. And when you're in a type of system like that, it's easy to get discouraged. But a lot of the people that can get through that first, let's say, year of discouragement, there's literally, like you said, there's nothing but growth on the other side of that.
Exactly. There's it's like it's like getting to that worst part of your business. That worst part is trying to figure out what you need to do and to motivate yourself to get it done, right? But like there's still that, like you need that win. You need that satisfaction. You need to know that what you're doing is going to be worth it. And if it doesn't come, like that sort of mentally unravels you. Like
It
it's
does. It eats away at confidence and things of that nature.
yeah, exactly that. Exactly that.
I think society in a whole, from time, like how people say the school systems are set up for factory workers when it comes to how we operate off a bell and stuff of that nature. School
Right.
teaches us how to conform and be in a place from a certain time to a certain time, and to do what you're told from a certain time to a certain time. Because when that last bell rings at the end of the day, the first thought that comes to almost every kid's head is freedom.
Exactly. Yo, when they
And
took away
oh yeah, go ahead.
yo, we were in kindergarten, bro, and um, we used to have to recess, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, so from like grades 1 through 5, we went out to recess, bro. When I went to middle school and found out there was no recess, bro, I was like, "What is this shit?" I was like, "What is this?" I was like, I was like, I just wanted to bring that up real quick
Oh yeah.
because it just made me think of that. I was like, "Bro, what is?" I was like, "What is this new shit? Like,
Yeah,
what are
yeah.
we?
It's a different
Are we
escalations. You lose nap time, then you lose
right?"
recess. Like,
I was like, yo, wait. I was like, wait, we're trapped here. That's when it first dawned on me. I was like, yo, I'm trapped in this motherfucker, and I can't leave. Like, I can't go nowhere.
legal system says you must stay there to complete all 12 grades and or become an adult.
Exactly, or drop the hell out.
Yeah. But like I said, we're farmed essentially. I think a lot of people don't think that, but we are. We're farmed. We're like cattle. We're like other animals that we keep in a farm. We are farmed to go through a process that teaches us how to work for somebody else. That's what we are.
Yeah,
We're groomed to work for somebody else. Our teachers work for the principal. The principal works for the school system. The school system works for quote unquote the people. But everybody in this system works for somebody else, and that's what we're groomed today to do.
Bro, absolutely. And not only that, but like we're put through a system. So like, all right, I'm gonna tell you something. We might have talked about this before. I think I probably told you the story like sometime in our lifetime. But when I was in the fifth grade, no, when I was in the fourth grade, so started in the fourth grade, I took the AR reading test, which is supposed to tell you, you know, what your reading level is, you know how well you comprehend literature and whatnot, right? So essentially, I was in the fourth grade. I scored on like I think like an 11th or 12th grade level or something like that. Like I was at adult reading age, right?
Yeah.
And essentially what that meant was, so you know, you remember AR trips, right? You read books, you take tests, you get points, and then at the end of the year, you either go to the pizza party, or you go on a trip or something like that.
Yeah, I remember those days.
Right. So basically, that essentially meant I had to read books in a certain category, right? They had it like color coded to where you had to pick a book that was in a certain category, and you had to read that book in order to get the points, in order for the points to count for you because of what
your reading level was.
Yeah, what your reading level was. And so basically what that meant for me was I had to read like books that aren't interesting to a child. You know what I mean? Like I could read Harry Potter because just because of the way it's written. It's a pretty lengthy book. I could read those. And that was cool. But once those, like at the time I think there were only like 4 books out at that point. I read those 4 books and then I was like, all right, what's next? Like what do I read? And I couldn't find a book for the life of me that was like that I could read that was of interest to me. Because just the year before, mind you, in the 4th grade, what, you're like 8, 7?
Somewhere around there, yeah.
I'm like, bro, I want to read Hank the Cowdog. Like, I want to read like books with pictures because, like, I'm a child, bro. And then so I went through all 4th grade basically, trying to find a way to get back into books where I could, you know, enjoy the reading that I enjoyed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then, my 5th grade year, you take the test every year to reassess your reading level, whatever. So this year I was like, all right, I'm gonna get these fools. I'm gonna essentially go in here. I'm gonna purposely fail this test so I can read whatever book I want to read. and basically what happened was I went in there. I purposely failed the test so I could get back to reading the books that I wanted to read. So 2 things happened. The first thing is that obviously they knew I had purposely failed the test because the year before I was on a 12th grade reading level. How did I go back to a 2nd grade reading level? In a year. So they knew what I had done, so they made me take it again and maybe be honest about my answers or whatnot. So that was the first thing that happened. Obviously, they corrected the situation. Like, hey, nah, you can't be doing this. And I explained why I did it, and I was like, I want to read the books that I enjoy. That's how I explained it.
Yeah.
That didn't get me out of nothing. They put me back in my original reading level, and they were like, all right, nah, you gotta stick to what's good for you or whatever. So that was the first thing that happened, which is, I guess, good in hindsight. But the second thing that happened is what I really want to talk about. The second thing that happened was, so my 5th grade teacher, or one of my 5th grade teachers, because at the time we were doing like a rotational thing where one teacher would teach a specific subject, classes would rotate, and then we would go to another teacher for another subject.
Yeah.
So basically, like an introduction to middle school and high school, where you have different periods or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my social studies teacher. So every teacher gets to review like the AR test to see what reading levels kids are at. I remember I was talking in class, and I'm 7. What? I'm talking to class, and I can't remember what I was doing. I was being disruptive or something. I caught her attention, no matter what it was.
Down,
and she stopped me, and mind you, I'm sitting there in front of the whole class,
and
she brings up my reading score. she brings up the fact that she knows that I scored below like or basically okay. So the AR test results
Yes, a while ago.
would tell you that I can't read, right? So essentially, what happened was she brought up my test score and was like, "I know what happened on that AR exam," and basically tried to embarrass me in front of the whole class. And I was like, I felt terrible, but I knew I had failed it on purpose. I was like, but I couldn't say nothing back to her because she wouldn't believe me. I was like, so you just brought this up to essentially try to embarrass me into being good in class? I was like, fam. Not, and at the time, I mean, I'm 7. I ain't thinking nothing about it. But then,
Yeah,
I think about it now, and I'm like, bruh, like you really tried to like shame me in front of all the other kids in the class.
yeah.
And I was like, how was that supposed to help me like improve my reading? Like, what was your goal there?
It served no purpose other than whatever little self entitlement she felt about being an authority figure.
Right. It's so the reason I told the story was because I wanted to convey that. So, like you said, the system is designed to farm us, right?
Yeah,
It's also designed to tell us that we can't function without the system. So, inadvertently, in her own way, she's basically saying she's basically telling me I wasn't good enough to basically giving me a negative review, right? Telling me I wasn't good. I wasn't good enough to read anything for the most part, right? Taking a smack at my self confidence, right?
yeah,
So I said that to say the system is designed for. Let's just say it's designed for like fish, right? If it's a bunch of fish in a school swimming down a stream, right? They're doing amazing because they're fish. But if you throw a monkey in the water and he tries to catch up to the fish, he's never going to be able to because he's not designed for swimming. He's designed for climbing trees. Just like akin to if you took the fish out of the water and told them to climb a tree, it'd be fucking impossible for them, right? Like
yeah. Everybody's
school
built for their lane and their environment.
exactly. School is designed for a specific kind of person, right?
Yeah,
School and it farms those people and pushes them out to be employees. Like it literally pushes them out to be employees for other people. So there's like a saying, right? A students work for the government. B students work for C students. Simple.
I believe that. Well, that's me being honest with you.
Because our is 43rd president George? Wait, no. Yeah, George Bush.
Yeah.
43rd president. Yeah, 43rd president George Bush was definitely a C student.
For sure.
Donald Trump was definitely a C student. And they run the country.
Yeah. What is it? I kind of had a similar experience when I first got into high school with a teacher. I can't remember her name. If I did, I would say it just because.
Out the hell.
No. But she was different from that perspective. It was an African American lady. And I had her for the introductory history class, whatever, in high school. And I've always been a smart kid for the most part. And the first test she gave us in her class, she wouldn't tell us what it was, but she gave it to us. We all took it. I scored the highest on it, and it was a GED test. And I pretty much had almost a perfect score on the GED test.
You killed it.
Yeah, and she was just like, she blanketed it as a blanket classroom to statement of a blanket statement to the classroom, and she said anybody that scored over X, Y, and Z could drop out today and go get their GED and skip the next 4 years of their life and not have to be here. And then but she said that because not a lot of people passed. It was probably me and maybe 2 or 3 others in a classroom of like 20 something. So realistically, she was only talking to like 3 or 4 of us. But she pulled me to the side and she was like, "Hey, you're a very bright kid." She's like, you scored higher than a lot of adults do taking this test." And she was like, "I see a lot of bright things for you in the future, X, Y, and Z. Don't let anybody try to dumb you down."
Facts.
She knows how the stigma is with school, especially with us being black and African American. Period. We don't like to be the. I guess. Well, I think that's changing. Hopefully, we don't like being the smart kid in the classroom because we get made fun of for being the smart kid.
Right.
And she wouldn't allow me in her classroom to be that kid. In her classroom, I would do everything to not answer questions. I wouldn't raise my hand. I would pretend to be asleep. And it got to the point with her, she wouldn't call on me, but she would ask a question. She would go around the classroom, let everybody get it wrong, and she would single me out purposely and and she'd be like, Shelby, everybody doesn't know that's what Shell is short for, Shelby. She'd be like, Shelby, tell me the answer. And of course I would answer it correctly. And she would do this every
Oh, of
day.
course.
Yeah.
Of course.
And of course I would answer it
Right.
correctly. And then she would do this every day until it got to the point that I started raising my hand and trying to answer every question so she would stop calling me out. Because I got she made it so that I couldn't hide. Like I had to embrace quote unquote what I am and what I had the potential to be. And she was one of the few teachers I had that wasn't a teacher that was like, you need to blend in and go through the system. It was, you can be better than this system if you apply yourself to be.
Right.
Don't let the box be your limits, but find a way to get out of the box.
Exactly. Yeah. I agree 100%, bro. I agree 100%. Because that box is stifling, bro. That it's like, okay. So let me ask you this. So everybody you went to high school with, of those people that you went to high school with, how many of them are still there, or still in that? Well, let me not say you went to high school because you went to high school in Raleigh. So
Yeah.
let me go back to like what middle school you were in New Bern.
Yeah.
Yeah. So middle school. So okay, of the people you grew up with in your childhood that you hung out with as a kid or you hung out with in middle school while you were there in New Bern, how many of those people actually left New Bern?
Very few. Very few. I would honestly boil it down to saying people that I actually know, maybe 4 or 5.
Yeah, exactly. So and how many would you say there were total, like of everybody?
Everybody, if we're just taking like, let's just say my class, my average classes or whatever, let's just say a
Yeah.
good like 100 people that I interacted with during my time there. Only about 4 or 5 left.
Right. So 4 or 5 left out of. Sorry, you said how many?
Let's just say 100 to make it an easier percentage type deal.
100. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm saying 5% of those people left that environment.
Hmm.
Even that seems kind of high.
Yeah, bro. I mean, no, it's like I definitely get it. I understand. So my graduating class, I low key have to look at my yearbook, but I want to tell you it's like 45 kids, like total. Out of that 45, black folks that went to college. Well, actually, most of us did go to college. The majority of us, like pretty much all the black, pretty much. Well, hold on, it's like I can name at least like 8 of us that went to college. So out of that 45, that's a pretty strong number.
Yeah.
So I think I just ruined my own example, but whatever. um, um, yeah, bro. Okay, so I'll say this: a lot of the kids that did stick around, or a lot of the kids that were from like an earlier year than me. Like my seniors and junior when I was a freshman, seniors and juniors and sophomores that were at school when I was there. I will say that the majority of them, for the most part, didn't go anywhere. Like they never left Sampson County, which is county my high school was in. They stayed there, stuck around. Some of them might have moved away through the military or something like that. But for the most part, like a lot of those people are still in the area. They're still there. Even some of those that went to college are back in that area. Whether they actually got jobs there, close to the area, or whether they, couldn't find a job after college, they, went back to Sampson County. Um, but for the most part, like I think my point is overall that if you stay there, like we talked about earlier, there's definitely a ceiling to how far you can come up.
Yeah.
You essentially go back in a box, and that box limits your potential. Unless, well, it's not that I say that. I recognize that I'm kind of overlooking a large portion of like earners market, right? So there's a bunch of YouTube stars that make videos and whatnot and earn all types of profits, or people like us that do podcasts, right? Like they have a large amount of like Patreon subscribers, and they make kudos and money off of Patreons, bro. So I would say that you can create that, but like I think leaving is a large part of opening your mind to being able to do something like that.
Yeah.
Because a large part of your success is the people you surround yourself with, right? So if you stay in a box where, so it's essentially a box with no ceiling, right? It's four walls that you can't see beyond, right? All you can see is the sun rise and fall every day. So there's opportunity for you to climb out of the box, but you have to get up high enough by yourself, or with the help of others, to be able to see what's going on outside of that box, to understand what's going on. And thankfully, with the internet, it's brought us a lot more awareness. But at the same time, like,
It's definitely put a
it's
window in that box.
yeah, exactly. Put a window in the box, 100%. It made the world so much smaller. Like we used to think, the world was huge. But now, like with the internet, like people tend to say that, like, racism is getting more prevalent. Kidnapping is getting more prevalent, sex trafficking, organ harvesting, that stuff. I'm like, bro, it's not different. Like it's nothing about this world is any different than it was back in the day, bro. It's just now we have these things called phones, and it's getting filmed and reported, and the internet is bringing it to you every single day. Like, but okay, my point is you have to be able to look outside of that box through one of those windows, see something, and realize, okay, I can get there too because I've now seen somebody else do it. So I would say the power of the internet is that it has brought knowledge to people and awareness. But like for the most part, a lot of the people that are in those smaller boxes are still struggling because they're not using the windows, or they don't want to. They don't want to look out the windows.
Yeah. And like I said, I've used this analogy before in one of our other podcasts about essentially a shark or a fish in a fish tank, and it not wanting to outgrow its environment for fear that it will die because it cannot move. You kind of got to think of it in that same scenario. If you want to grow, you got to step outside your comfort zone. And that's what that teacher did for me, though. She forced me to not, like I said, she forced me not to dumb myself down. She forced me to embrace who I am and what natural gifts I've been given as far as learning and all this other stuff. And I later had a teacher my senior year, and God, I wish I could remember her name too. But she's the one that honestly instilled this full entrepreneur spirit into me, because I had the teacher freshman year that pretty much wouldn't let me put myself in a box, and then the teacher senior year that was like, whatever I want to do, I just gotta have commitment and understanding of it. I just got to be willing to follow through. She told us, and she worked at that school since the day it was built. So we were the 30th graduating class. She had 30 years in that school, and she told us, because we was a bunch of seniors in her class, and she straight up told us, she's like, she don't care if we go to college. She don't care if we become mechanics or X, Y, and Z. She just wants us to be the best people that we can be. And she's like, we got a dream, we got a goal, we got a passion. We need to find it and follow it. She's like, don't let nobody else stop you from doing something you want to do. She's like, unless it's the wrong thing to do, aka like becoming like Juan Pablo and all these other people moving tons of kilos. But she was like, follow your goal, follow your dreams, follow your passion. So to have one teacher to tell you, hey, don't lock yourself in a box, and another teacher saying to trust that voice inside you, those two teachers are very instrumental in setting up the spirit that I have to do the things that I do now.
Right. It's It's people like that. I think it's always like one person in your life that like really tells you, hey, you could be great, fam. Like you could do more than this, or at least somebody that inspires you to do that. I mean, like for me, it was probably my parents because for the most part, I don't know, bro. I didn't really figure out what I want to do with my life until like maybe like a year and a half ago, bro. Like to be honest with you, like
Yeah.
I I went to college because I was supposed to. I got good grades because I was supposed to in high school. Like I did what I was supposed to do according to my parents. But like I didn't really figure out what I wanted to do until, like I said, like a year ago, man. And then life just changed, bro.
Yeah. Like I always knew from high school and having those two teachers, I always knew I wanted to be my own boss. Like I always knew I wanted to be
Mhm.
an entrepreneur. I always knew I wanted to run my own business. Now I didn't know exactly what my lane was going to be, but I just knew
Yeah.
I always wanted to be my own boss. Like that was the only thing I knew.
What made you think that though, or what made you? How did you get to that conclusion?
Like I said, it just kind of stems from having both of those teachers. Like I didn't feel like the school system did any justice for me. I kind of felt how we were getting pushed along through learning through standardized testing and stuff like that. And from working like on our grandma's, essentially, for lack of better words, a farm, from working all the summers out there and doing stuff like that and being told what to do, I always
Yeah.
knew if I didn't want to be bossed around, then I had to become a boss myself. And I felt like the only ways to become a boss myself wasn't become like a manager at somebody else's job, was to run the business itself. Like nobody can tell the owner what to do. You can advise him, you can suggest, but you can't tell an owner what to do with his own stuff. And that's kind of what my thinking became through high school and learning and everything else was. I knew I wanted to run my own business. Like it used to want to be, I used to want to run a restaurant, and still one day I might have a restaurant. But like that was my first thought of a business. But it just kind of put in place and instilled in me that I knew my goals and my dreams. I didn't want to leave them in somebody else's hands.
Yeah, I agree. Because it's like it's it's one thing to look at things and you have a goal. You set something for yourself, right? You you have a light, right? That you have a focus that you want to commit to, right? But then you don't necessarily know whether that's working for somebody or working for yourself. You don't have like a vision for that. I always used to wonder, like, you go to work with people, right? And other people seem to have like the like for at least in my experience, other people seem to have this weird like drive to want to work for other people and get shit done for somebody else. I have just never really cared about the work I was doing as an employee. If that's honest. Like I've always been the type of person, all right, this is the task in front of me. This is what I need to do to get paid. This is like, you know what I mean? This is so like, all
Yeah.
right, I'm gonna do this to the best of my ability. But when people start stepping beyond their boundaries as an employer, like asking me to work weekends or working like super late nights, especially like consistently, like we're talking about like a couple like weeks and weeks on end, like weekends and nights,
Yep.
I start to get very like I just at that point I'm like, all right, look, you are valuing my time. And
Yeah. Once they start
if,
asking for that extra versus what you signed up for.
right. A lot of people in corporate America talk about work life balance, and that's because when you're a salaried employee, right? Okay, you make a certain amount of money every week or every month, no matter what. So like when somebody essentially asks you to work more hours, like work on weekends or work late nights, that essentially devalues your time because all right, you got hired to work 9 to 5 for a certain amount of dollars an hour, and you were cool with that, but the minute that they ask you to work more, you essentially get paid less per hour or less per week or less per month, right? Especially if you got to come in on a Saturday and work an extra day, your whole week is now thrown off because now it's like it feels like you're working for free
Yeah.
at that point. But what really is happening is you're essentially devaluing all the work you did that entire week
Yeah, you're
because
dividing it by six now instead of five.
exactly. And on the weeks where you're working, that 7 day a week, like you divide it by seven instead of five, and it cuts it drastically. It's like, and on top of that, like if in my previous job, I was getting yelled at. You know what I mean? Like people would come in there and talk to us like any kind of way, like just, and I just be like, "Yo, do you really expect us to do anything after you came in here?" And did like, and it would trickle down. It's one of those things. Like, all right, my manager. Okay, so here's the structure, right? So there's a guy who's in charge of the entire project, right? He's the one who came in. He's probably not. He's not the one that came in and signed the work, but he's the one that's the liaison on site to speak to the head guy at the client. He's the relationship manager basically between the top guy at the client and our entire team. So essentially, what would happen is he would come in, get pushback from the client. The client would I don't even know how the conversations would go. Essentially, he get pissed off, right?
Yeah.
And then he come back into our room, get pissed off at us, and essentially transfer the energy, right? They're not happy. They're not happy with the product. He get yelled at, so he come in, yell at us, and then expect us to like perform better or some shit. Like it was the weirdest dynamic I'd ever seen, but it was like none of us were like willing to talk to him about it. It's like, yo, how do you expect us to perform better if we're in a hostile work environment? Like how do you imagine this works? Like do you think you just come in here, yell at me, and then and then somehow magically like things go back to like to the or somehow magically things get fixed or somehow magically things like change for the better? Like yo, I number one, I don't want to work for you. Like I'm not inspired to work for you because number one, even if I do give it my hardest and something, yo, I had a client that would literally change requirements like after shit was done. Like you would get the requirements like, all right, okay, this is great. The development team would design something. I was in charge of the QA team, right? So
Yeah.
the development team would design something. We would sit down with the client, explain it. They would sign off on it. We'd go do it. My team would then analyze it, and then as soon as we got through QA, they'd be like, "Okay, no, this is not exactly what we wanted." I'm like, "Yo, we're finished." Yo, fam, we are done. We're literally like 2 weeks out from like making this live for like customers. Like strangest thing ever, bro. Like, and then they come back at the last minute and be like, "All right, yo, we're gonna redo this whole thing." And then essentially what would happen is essentially, okay, so it's like a mix up in the chain link communication. So there's a guy even above the guy who is in charge of the project on the client side. So that guy would come in at the end and evaluate it, and he wouldn't be happy with the product because the first guy designed it. And I personally thought that that guy the head guy didn't like the head guy,
Yeah.
so he would come in, yell at him, and then he essentially yell at us, and then we get yelled at later. But like in a hot like the point is like how can you facilitate growth or well-being and loyalty in a hostile work environment, right? Like how do you when you're conveying that harsh negative energy, how do you expect people to react? You expect them to just do what you say? Like that's a very like tyrant mindset, and that's essentially how I felt
Yeah.
all the time.
That's how it was in my last employer, like the store manager. He he was so emotional and moody. He would snap one minute and try to be your friend the next minute, and then he just get in these ruts and these moods, and for lack of better words, he's being an asshole for an extended period of time. And then he would order pizza for the store and act like that was like
Here's
no,
an apology.
yeah, that it didn't change your behavior. It didn't change how you make me feel. Like a chicken wing and a slice of pizza is not gonna give me my dignity back for what you were how you try to berate or belittle like what I was doing. And it's definitely
Right.
not going to make me want to go above and beyond and do things that I don't necessarily have to do because they weren't, quote unquote, in the job title and descriptions you laid out for me. It's like you can't come wanting more from somebody, but then not know how to treat them.
Exactly. So I originally went to that project because I had worked with one of the managers there before, and he he felt like he felt like the kind of person I wanted to work for. Like he was the kind of guy that he would call you out on your shit, but then he reinforced the fact that you were doing great in other areas, right? Like he'd be like, all right, this was disappointing, but you did okay, and then so he's like a bad news, good news guy, right? He'd be like, all right, bad news is you messed this up, and next time I need this to be better. But then the good news is that such and such loved what you did here, and you're doing well overall. But like he like he'd tell you where you were falling off, and then he'd be like, all right, look, but you also did great, and he reinforced the fact that you were doing well. And he would often be a shield for us, right? So if there was management above him that had a problem with what was going on with us, he would always like take the brunt of the brunt of the lash out, right? He'd be the guy that took it out, because essentially what was going to happen was he was going to come back to us, ask us to do something, and we do it, and the management would be happy. Period. And that's how it worked. He would take the tongue lashing, come to us, talk to us about it. We'd fix it. It would be done. Everything would be good. But then when I got on this project, he essentially stopped doing that. Right. So like the management that was above him was essentially intimidating him to the point where he would essentially let it overflow. Like he, instead of standing up and being the person that's there, explaining what's going on, taking the heat for the situation, he completely let it overflow, and it essentially fell on our heads. And it basically caused us, for the most part, not to value the work we were doing. And it just became like, after like a year of that, I was so glad I was a consultant, because I was like, yo, this, I think that was the only saving grace. It's like, all right, I'm only going to be here for maybe like 4 more months. After that, I'm going somewhere else. So what?
Go sit.
I can dig it right now. I can dig it, because I've definitely had some projects where, it was like easy going. Like I basically did nothing and just got paid.
Oh yeah.
So there's definitely a trade off.
Let's see. We are now at an hour and 42 minutes for this episode itself.
Yeah, bro, we stacked.
Yeah.
We stacked.
Yeah. So I think we're gonna wrap it here. Give everybody a quick recap, and then we're gonna get good at these. We're gonna either stop doing it so we have to split them into 2, or we're gonna get to a point where we're just gonna try to get in and out. I don't know.
Bro, we missed the whole segment of the podcast, right? We essentially rambled on about entrepreneurship and being your own person, and how the system is keeping us down and shit. We sound like a bunch of woke motherfuckers on this podcast.
Right? I know. That's what I'm saying. We kind of switched the mode of this one. We will have more finance stuff coming in the future, but we went from just earning versus working into entrepreneurship and stuff like that. So, like I said, there's still a lot of gems in here. It just wasn't on top of what we originally thought we were going to do today.
Right. Yeah.
So, like I said, listeners, we will get better. We will start. Eventually, we'll stay on task.
Yeah. So yeah, let's wrap it up here. So let's call it a day. Go ahead, hit us with the outro, my guy.
I got you, my G. So this has been the Spare Keys Podcast. I'm your boy Shell.
And this is your boy Q.
And until next time, be easy. Have a great listen and peace.
See you guys next time.